So now we're recording. So today is just to introduce you to Jquery Library, which you may already be familiar with. It's one of a few libraries that are available to use with JavaScript. So the idea of the Jquery Library is to have a little bit of code and a lot of activity, right? So it is a bit old. I think Jquery Library basically was introduced around 2006, and it sort of peaked in its use around 2013, 2014. It is being used less in new developments now because some people have sort of said, well, most of the stuff that you can do in Jquery was originally there because of weaknesses of JavaScript, which have now been overcome, many of those. And so you may find that yourself working in an environment, in a work environment, where you might even be told not to use Jquery. But on the other hand, if you look at the statistics, apparently in legacy systems and systems that are out there, there is a high proportion of Jquery still there. So it's probably worth your while to at least sort of be familiar with it. I hope I can move from one slide to another without sort of, yeah. Okay, so yeah, I always have trouble with that. All right, so these are the ideas that we want to talk about in this lesson. We want to be able to actually access the Jquery library. So Jquery library is available at jquery.com. You can just go there and you can download it onto your computer. The other way that you can do it is you can actually just link live to a server, which has the most updated version of the library on it. So that's another appealing option. I mean, you may want to download it onto your computer, so then you don't have to worry about using some other server. But there are problems with either way of doing that. So we're going to look at some of the things that we can do with Jquery. Some of the things that kind of just seems like nice sort of tricky stuff. We can make things disappear on the page. We can make things reappear on the page. We can change the HTML on the page with fairly simple queries. Manipulating the DOM, so lists, adding items to lists, deleting items from lists, all this type of thing. Changing attributes. In any particular HTML item, we can do those. Adding and removing elements, all of those. Hopefully we can show you now. This is not all the stuff you can do in Jquery. This is just the stuff that we're going to look at in today's lesson, right? Obviously, there's a lot more. You can go to W3 Schools. They got a nice little thing on Jquery. You can go through and look at all the things there, and they give you a little quiz. So and you can go to Jquery, to their website, and you can see, and you can watch videos. So as I said, it's kind of mature, Jquery. It's not a new thing, right? So a lot of people are, if you go onto YouTube and see what the guys are saying there, they'll say, don't use Jquery, use Angular or some other framework or something like that. That's fine. So I'm not going to say to you to don't use Jquery. I'm just saying, I'm just presenting that to you, that's what. So I know I talked to Doug here. You're going to have Doug as a teacher at some point, because he teaches the year 3 sort of project stuff. And his thing was, well, he doesn't let the students use Jquery. All right, so he wants them to use something a bit more new frameworks and tools. So yeah, it's there. It's not new. Okay, I guess we'll just leave it at that. So it is, it does, as I said, a little bit of typing, a lot of stuff happening. So, I mean, I think that's the main attraction of Jquery. It's not very hard to use it. You'll find that today's exercise is not going to be too hard. Before you use it, of course, you have to have it. And so there's 2 ways to get it. You can go to jquery.com. You can download the library from there. And so that will give you a file. So you should create a folder somewhere in your project that you're doing, and say in a JS folder, and then put your Jquery folder in there. File in there. So for example, it's of a type JavaScript. You could download it, and then you can link it using an SRC in your between 2 script tags in your head of your HTML document that you're working on. That's one way of doing it. Now it's a good way, but the problem is that you have now got that library on your computer. You can edit it. So heaven forbid you could corrupt it. And then all your programs that you're using that are relying on Jquery might not work. So that's as I said when I talked to Doug about this, he's not encouraging his students to use jQuery. One of the reasons he says is, well, it's a bit of overhead that's not necessarily helpful. You will have to decide. Sorry, now what was that? Yeah, next. I think, yes, slide. So here's the other way of doing it, a content delivery network. So basically you have multiple servers out there on the internet that are accessible. So I can see on Bushra's screen there, she's got, it looks like a compressed version of the Jquery library that you maybe downloaded. Is that right? So yeah, so that's the thing. You can edit it, you could mess it up, but you can run it off your machine. That's what. There's the other way of doing it. The other way of doing it is that you just do a Google if you like. All right. So if you do a Google CDN of the Jquery library, you'd be able to find a link. You can also find this. You can find this in W3 Schools. So if you search on it, you can do that. So basically, just do a search on the CDN for Jquery, and you'll be able to find a link, and you just put that link into your head in your HTML file. And so what will happen then is that you'll have to do that first, right? That's going to have to be at the before you start working with your JavaScript. So you'll have some JavaScript after that. Sorry. Yes, it's a library to augment JavaScript. It works with JavaScript. Yes, and the code, your code you'll see is in a JavaScript format. So yes. So as I said, there's multiple servers. That's why we call it a content delivery network. It's not a single server. And when you use this link, it'll find the closest server to you. So as long as you're connected to the network properly, you'll actually be able to get that that connection and be able to use the library. So that's another way of doing it. Also, it'll give you your latest library because when you do the search, you find the latest version, and that's going to be a good thing for you. It talks there a little bit about the compressed and the development version. If you use the compressed version, it'd be kind of hard to read, but maybe that's a good thing. Yeah.
I think it's better if you just write
This is kind of yeah. I'm getting this as a recommendation to do it this way. Yeah, use a CDN.
You just have to copy paste.
Yeah. All right. So sorry. I have very poor control on this mouse. Sorry. It's my finger. I know it's my problem. All right. So how Jquery works, we have a Jquery function, which can be shortened to just $ with brackets. And so basically in the $ with brackets, we use inside the brackets a selector just like we'd use in CSS. And so the selector that we've got from CSS, we can then have an action method on it. And so that's kind of nice. You already know how to do selectors in CSS, so you're halfway there. You got this very simple way of sort of finding them with this $1 and a brackets, and then you got actions that you can work on them. So it's nothing to, it's kind of saving you a little bit of work, actually. You don't have to do all that, get element by ID stuff. Okay, so yeah, maybe it's saving you a bit of work. So these selectors that you're familiar with, I'm sure you're familiar with, about divs, right? My element, whatever. This is my element, sorry, that's just an ID that's been put there. It's a P element. So you can use, so what we've done here is they've got a P element, they've added an ID to it. And so that you can specifically just reference that paragraph as opposed to every other paragraph. Likewise, you can reference as a class, a whole bunch of elements that all have the same class, or a particular P element, which is of a particular class. Likewise, here we've got a list, and in that list, there are A tags, say A elements inside the list, and you are going to just use one which is of a class that's been set as a class called navigation. Okay, all of this stuff right? An A tag, which is a child of a P element. All right, so in here, what we're doing in the square brackets is we're finding a particular attribute of this of this element with a particular property of that element. So we're going to say, okay, for input, the type text inputs, we're going to be able to do something with them. Maybe you have a bunch of elements that more than one of the same type. So got a bunch of A elements that are together, and this will just give you a handle on the first one. And likewise, odd ones as opposed to even ones. And maybe the first child, I'm sure you're familiar with that sort of idea, right? So we got our LI tags. Maybe you have a bunch of those under there, and you get the first one of that, first one in the list. So that is not new, I hope, because it's the same pretty much as we do just with CSS selectors. All right, so it does return an object, and we can use methods on it. CSS is one of the methods that we can use as an action on the jQuery, but it's not the only one. We've got a whole bunch more that we can use, and sort of we'll look at them afterwards. So here we are, we're selecting a paragraph. Basically, we're selecting any paragraph. This is just saying select paragraph. So any paragraph on that page can then have this applied to it. And hopefully that doesn't look too unfamiliar to you. It's just a CSS command, isn't it? Right. So we're saying font size will be changed to 300%. And so this is a CSS method or action on the paragraph, all the paragraphs in that case. So it'll change all the P elements to 300%. Okay, now, as it says here, you return an element, and the element is kind of like an array, but not exactly like an array. And so the element may have multiple components. And so you maybe want to find the first one or the last one or whatever. So you've got a way of doing that with this method here with .eq. A number there will give you first, second, third of the sort of fake array of things in that element. So for example, here, what we're saying is we've got a paragraph, we've got a class associated with that paragraph, my element, and that has been returned, and we will just take the first of what comes out of that. We'll apply CSS to it and change the font size to 36. So this means the first one, right? And we could have another number there to be the next one, whatever. Oops. Is that the next one? Yes. As it says here, now look, here's another way of doing it, right? What do you think we're doing here? Got square brackets and a 1 inside. So that's kind of like managing an array, right? So we've got a bunch of P tags. On this page, we got lots of paragraphs. There's more than one. So this is going to give you the second paragraph, right? So it's going to give you access to the second paragraph. Now, if you do it like that, then we'll look what's happening here. That's just sort of normal normal JavaScript that we're using it with. So we're using our JavaScript with our jQuery. So second paragraph, remember this from JavaScript? See how the font size is different than the way we, font size with the big A. Okay, so we're using JavaScript with our jQuery. Okay, so how do we use it? Oh, we got this thing called document ready function. So why is that happening? Because you might be in the habit of putting your script in the head. You don't have to. You can put your script in the body, no problem. But if you're putting your script in the head, what you might find is you've got a problem with your script because the script is going to be acting on something in the DOM and it hasn't been rendered yet. All right, it's not ready. So we have this thing document ready. So we can do this. What we're doing here is we're just wrapping our jQuery with this. And what it will do is it'll make sure that the jQuery isn't executed until the entire page has been sort of loaded up. Okay, so we load up the page before we do it. That's all that's happening. So this is kind of like a wrapper of that. If you look at that, we're going to put all our jQuery code in there if we're putting our jQuery in the head. Putting our jQuery in the head, we'll do something like this. Document ready, which just means that we won't execute this until the document has been totally sort of loaded up into the memory. Then we go ahead and do our jQuery. Otherwise, we could get errors. So I hope that I'm expecting you'll use this a lot, right? Because you definitely don't want to have a situation where you're trying to access something that's not rendered. So the next sort of thing is we can do all these things, right? We can sort of access something through the DOM, and we can sort of have some events that go with it. Now, click is one event. There's a lot of other events, to do with where the key, what keys have been pressed. If you're keying up or keying down, if you're hovering over an item, if you're sort of focused on it or you're blurring, you remember those things. We've done some of those things in JavaScript. So what we've done here is, so we've said, okay, if somebody clicks on a paragraph, any paragraph, this is any paragraph, click on the paragraph, then what will happen is, well, whatever we're gonna do with that thing. So now here we're saying if somebody clicks only on the first paragraph, right? Because it's EQ, the first paragraph, then we're going to do whatever it is. Sorry. It's my finger. This is such a small little button to work with. All right, so I think that's the right one. So for example, we can click and we can put a function. We'll call that a callback function there. What's going to happen here is the P, which is associated here. We've got another way of referring to that. We'll show you in a minute. But this P, actually, you're going to click on the P and it's going to hide, right? I think that will actually hide all the P's. Yes, it will hide all the P's, will disappear because we didn't specify which one to hide. We're just going to hide them all. They're all going to sort of disappear from the screen. Now, at the bottom there, I mentioned that there's lots of other events that you can sort of work with. You've got double click, hover, mouse down, mouse up, focus, blur, submit, key press. That can be used in the same way that click is being used here. Okay. Is that a warning from the college, or is that somebody's mobile phone? Oh, it's my wife. Should I answer it? Hold on. I'm not going to record. That's for sure. So, all right. So we've got this thing called this, and so this just refers to the thing that we've identified with our dollars. All right. So what we're saying here is, okay. So we have identified or selected the P. We're going to work with a click action, and this function is this function here. Our callback function is going to be working with this. This is P. All right. So in other words, the P is going to be hidden. So it's just another way of doing it. This is actually going to refer to the element that we've identified with our selector there. And so again here, this one here is going to be the first element. The first paragraph. The first paragraph is the thing that's going to be hiding, whereas here they're all going to hide because here it's just all of them. So it's kind of just another way of doing what we did before. We could just put P in here, right? We could have put PEQ in here, but this just is the thing that's sort of wrapping it.
So instead of the HP element, so it will disappear one by one each click. Instead of one click, it will disappear all.
This one will disappear all of them. Yeah, each P will disappear when the user clicks on. Oh no, this is one by one. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, one by one. And this one is only the first one. So the other ones wouldn't be affected by that. Okay, so basically the same thing. We've got so related to the hide. So this is what this is going to do is the button is not, this time we're not going to hide the button. We're going to hide some other element that we've identified by a ID. That's a hide. We've got related methods there. We got the show, and which is the opposite of hide. So if something is hidden, if you've got display none, if you set that up in your code, then you can do show to make it display. That's like putting the display back on. And toggle is just going to be the reverse of what it is. So if it's hidden, it'll show it. If it's showing, it'll hide it. So we can just use toggle. Toggle means whatever it is, it's going to make it the opposite. If it's showing on the screen, if the display is none, sorry, that would be hidden, then it will show it. And if it's showing, it will hide it. So toggle is, yeah, we got show to, so it does both, depending on where it is. Now we got a lot of toggles. We got this toggle for show and hide. We've got toggles for fading. I don't know if it's in this lecture, but you know, you got fading, fading in, fading out, and you can toggle those things as well. There's a lot of toggles. If you look at W3 schools, it sort of covers a lot of those. They're all sort of meant, I won't say all, but there's many mentioned there. So what do we got going here? We've got, you can, with the show, we could have just said show, but you'll see that show, you can use it to include, what we've done here is a time. So we're going to wait for a second, and then we're going to call another function. This is our callback function there. And so when this is finished, then this will run. So that's basically what that's going to do. So we are working on button 2. We've selected button 2. When we click button 2, whatever's identified as P1 is going to show after 1,000 milliseconds or a second. And then after that, when that's done, then this will happen. Then this, which is P1, right, is going to change its color to green for the text. So this always works that way. So this is referring to what's been identified in this function. This P1 will be changed to color green. I guess that's the next one. Yes. All right, so you saw the show. We can work with various attributes and of our objects, right? So with this properties, with this we've used the selector for P1. When we click on it, what's going to happen there is whatever the HTML is. This is kind of like the inner HTML thing that we did with JavaScript. Whatever the HTML is going to be changed. And you see what's going to be changed there is going to include HTML tags. So this is going to sort of put a new tag in paragraph 1 that's, yeah, that's going to say this new content. In italics, I guess. So supposing we had an input, all right, we're going to have a value on it, all right? So we've got a value property there, and we can change its value, right? So that's another way of doing it. So we have the HTML. Another one we have is text. I don't know. I guess I didn't show you the text one yet. So so with our input here, we say that we might have multiple inputs, but we're only going to work on the input which has the ID of first name. So we're narrowing it down. Focus means when we've sort of moved our cursor onto that. When that happens, then the ID first name of input, we're going to put the value of Ahmed into that. So this would be like an input box. And when we move our cursor to it, Ahmed appears inside the input box as the value for it. And likewise here. So here we can, what's going to happen here is we have an image tag, which has an ID of my image. When we click on it, what's going to happen there is it's going to refer to this image here, right? The SRC, the attribute SRC is going to be changed this. So you know that in the image tag, SRC. So this is going to be, so that our image will be changed to that image. Now, of course, we would have to have our folder of images, and we would have to have that image be there. And then that would work. Okay, so supposing we have a list and we want to add things to the list. You can add things to the front of a list. You can add things to the back of a list. And so we have two special sort of methods for that. We've got append. So here we've got a div that's been identified by a ID of growing. It doesn't have to be a list. I mean, it could be, as it says there, just a bunch of paragraphs together. But if you do append, that will put inside the div. So not outside the div, inside the div. We could put things outside the div, but that would be after or before. So we've got another thing called after or before. But if we want to put things inside it, we can use append or prepend. So a prepend is going to put it at the front, at the start of that, whatever this element is. This one is a div growing. And append is going to put it at the end, but inside the div. You with me? If we wanted to put something outside the div, or the element, suppose it was a list, like a UL we could use before or after, which would be outside of that element. So that's those. Then we can remove things. All right. So we can remove an individual with remove, or we can remove all the children. Empty. So if you got an element that's got lots of children in it, you can just go empty, boom. Or you can remove individual one at a time. Remove a selected one. So this one here is this div has got multiple elements inside of it, and the empty would just remove them all. Whereas remove, we'd have to highlight an individual one. Well, this would remove the entire, selected element div. All right, so I am not quite finished. I know you want me to be finished, but I'm not quite finished. But I think I'm. Sorry. React. Oh, wow, that's cool. So I think, yeah, so we've got a jQuery file here in the examples that you can sort of have a look at. Really? Maybe I'd want to look at it in a different way, right? So that's kind of hard to look at. It's the same one that I was working in. All right. So that's not what I was looking at. So yeah, that's downloaded the, yeah, that's kind of not what I was expecting. Is this my examples? All right, so DOM manipulation. Yes, this is it. I think so. All right. So let's have a look at what's going on here. All right, you might remember this. This is a light switch one. Do you remember the light switch one? So we're taking the light switch. So we got two buttons, which switches the light, and you got a reset. Aha. And so you can, with the reset, you're going to empty everything which is in the input area that's got a value of reset on it. So that's this. So we've got this input button reset. It's going to empty everything out of that. Sorry, question? Yes. Is that better? So the other thing I should do is I should actually run the, so hopefully that looks familiar to you. So we've got, reset won't do anything at the moment, I don't think. Yeah, it's because there's nothing to reset. But we've got the switch light. Hopefully that's familiar to you. So that's a toggle that's switching between. Okay, so what's happening with that? It works on the input, which has a value of switch light, which is this bit here. Okay, when it's clicked, when that is clicked, so that would be when we click this button. What happens is it checks to see what is the image, right? What is the image that is linked? Yeah, what is the image that is linked? So where's our image tag in here? Here it is. So which is that image? Is that image the on image? So it's going to start off with it being the on image. And if it is, so you see that's an if statement there. If it's the on image, then what it's going to do is it's going to change it to the off image. Right? So those two images both have to be there. Then it's going to add to the front of status. So where's status? Sign status. That status is at the bottom. Yeah, so we didn't see that. I was clicking that every time I clicked this. We got the status area here. Now, when I bet what happened when I hit the reset, what's reset going to do? Reset is going to empty out the status. So this is the status here. So when I hit the reset, they're all gone, right? So they've all been emptied. So how did they get there? When I press the switch, it's prepended. Where's it? Yeah, it's prepended. The light is now off. So we've got this if else thing going there, right? If the image was on, then we change it to off and we prepend, the light is now off. But if it was in the off, then we change the light to the on and we prepend, the light is now on. So now the light is on. So when I click on it, it should do this thing, which is change it to the off one, and it should put in front of this little bit of text, it should say, now the light is off. Oh, running out of time. So yeah, and I can keep doing that. I can keep doing that. And we just get that big list of stuff going in the status. So that's what's happening there. Hopefully this bit of code here isn't too unfamiliar with you. Yeah. So there's that. And I'll reset that. Let's have a look at the other code that we've got there, the Jquery Effects. Oh, yes. Guns N' Roses. Okay. So come on, Sublime. So what do we got going on here? We can, yeah, these ones, this is not a toggle like the other one. So we can do this kind of once. Now, in the last thing that we looked at, we saw that we could do something with the form. So we've got this thing here called fill form. We've got a button there, and we've got this text. Now that looks like this. That's what we've got here, right? We've got this text with name. All right. So here we have a little function that's going when we click on the input value of fill form there. So when I click on that, what it should do is it should put the name Ahmed Hamada as a value to that. So let's see if that's right. Oh, do I have to click like that? Come on, maybe it's I have to. Yeah, sorry, I have to fill the form. So what did I miss there? Button fill form. Function. Oh, yes. So, of course, yes, it's on the button fill form. Sorry about that. So when I click on that, it puts the Ahmed Hamada in there. Now, when I click on the next pick, so next pick is this button here. So we've got these two images that are there, but look, the two images are there, but one of them is displayed none. Aha. So when we click on next pick, it's not that it's sort of cycles between them so much. What it's actually going to do is it's going to fade this out, and then it's going to change the text here, and it's going to fade in the rows. So how can we see that? So next pick. When we click on it, what it's going to do is it's going to hide the guns. It's going to hide the guns, but it's going to take 3 seconds to do that. And then it's going to show the rows in the same place. So they're there, right? Well, actually, slightly different place. They're one paragraph after the other, after 1000. And then it's going to work on this. This is our H1. It's going to add to the H1. It's going to add the roses bit with an ampersand, and it's going to change the color to red. So let's do it and see. So slowly, 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 it fades it out, and then it changes the H1, and then it fades in the picture. So that's how that one's working. All right, so those are our examples. I hope that sort of helps. about it. I'm going to stop the share. And